as we progress. So, hey, one of the things about being the stand-in president is you don't have a bell. So I don't know about you guys, but I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, and I had basically the run of the community until it was dinner time. And at dinner time, my mom would get out a cowbell and she'd ring a cowbell. That's how I knew it was time to come home. So that's going to be our bell today. So with that, we're going to start our meeting. And for those that don't know me, I'm Russ McCracken, past president. Well, I don't know, 3 years ago, I forgot. And I'm filling in for Sue today, who has her Boys and Girls Club board meeting. So with that, why don't we get rolling here? And what do we need to do here? We need to start with the pledge. So Jessica, if you could throw the flag up there, I'd appreciate it. You're welcome to go along with me, or if you all want to just be on mute, I'll do it. So here we go. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tom Bolden, I saw your shiny face there a bit ago. Are you going to give us some
Yep.
inspiration?
Well, we need some more cowbell. That's what we need more. There we go. Well, greetings, past President Ross and fellow Rotarians. For inspiration today, I've selected some quotes from an unknown author, Mark Twain, and a speaker our own past district governor Renee Campbell had at a district conference, the first American woman to summit Mount Everest, Stacey Allison. Here we go. Volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in. As you can't do it alone, you accomplish things by working together with other people, utilizing their strengths and resources, pushing through your fear, trying things that take you out of your comfort zone. Understand that failure is part of the process towards success. Finally, dream big. Why limit yourself? If you don't try, you'll never know. So as we move through this new year, let us not only show our love through words, but with action. For as Rotarians, we strive to give service above self. But also remember, Mark Twain commented, I may be able to live for 2 months on a good compliment. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Next on the agenda are guests, and I have no pre-notice of any guests, so if anybody has a guest, if you want to just raise your hand and we'll recognize you and you can make your introduction.
And raise my hand. Russ?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I am officially going to be introducing, but Mary Way is my guest today. We've already been talking to her a little bit, all the way from Bend. So I don't know if she's there, but she's going to be part of the head table. So
also, Russ, I want to comment that your volume level is lower than everybody else's.
It is. How about if I move the microphone closer? Is that better?
That might work better.
All right. Any other guests? I'm looking, a whole bunch of people on the screen now, and I see no other guests. So moving along for there, visiting Rotarians. Do we have any visiting Rotarians today? I am not seeing any visiting Rotarians. Okay. Club announcements. I am aware of one club announcement. Jen Columbus, is it you or Barbie? I'm not sure which, or is it both of you? Barbie, you're on mute, Barbie. There you go.
Yes, nope, not now. Yes, it's me. Thank you. I am happy to announce, along with Jen and the Literacy Committee, that we've selected our 2021 Literacy Grant recipients, and we wanted to let you guys know all of that. There were actually 6 local organizations or entities that applied, and we selected 3 that most closely met our criteria for the awards. So the recipients for 2021 are, drum roll, the Gilbert House Children's Museum, $750 for their free Little Library program. No, Little Free Library. Then $1,200 to St. Francis Shelter for their Library in a Box program. And then $2,200 to the Boys and Girls Club. They are going to be providing supplemental reading materials for students in the distance learning program through Salem Kaiser Schools. And so we're very excited to present those. And as Chuck mentioned earlier, I think the checks are in the mail, and we hope to hear from them later on, maybe with a little more details about their program at a later program. And did I introduce myself? I think I forgot. Barbie Dressler with Salem Kaiser School District. That's it.
All right, thank you very much, Barbie, and thanks to the Literacy Committee for kind of doing the lifting for the club. The club really appreciates your efforts. Moving along, it looks like it's time for bell ringers, and I saw there's Rick Galpo. Rick, you're up. You got the stage.
Well, I have an unfortunate news at the moment, followed by good news. The unfortunate news is we have no prepared bell ringers. No one sent me any bell ringers, so I can't do fancy graphics to read off your bell ringer. The good news is we have time for you to support the Rotary Foundation by doing a bell ringer from the floor.
So Rick, if I can start off, I'll just do my lunch money for the month of January, a $56 bell ringer.
Yay!
Anybody else spend the bell ringer?
I'll do one. Did
We,
you unmute? Oh,
Go ahead, Shane.
oh,
Shane's
Shane's
on.
muted.
Unmuted.
You're still on mute, Shane.
There. Okay, now you can hear me. My hand was cold for my blender drink, so it wouldn't work. I think, Rick, you're going to be doing a bell ringer for your organization. So if that's the case, if not, I'm bringing a bell for Emily Swart coming on with the Marion Polk Food Share, which is a fabulous hire.
Thank you. Very excited about that. I did a bell ringer for that 2 weeks ago. So I'm not remiss, and I appreciate you also appreciating Emily. She's amazing.
She is great.
Rick, you can do one again.
Well, there you go. I am going to do a bell ringer, but this time not for Emily. I am going to do it for Ryan as the Speaker of Estate Gifts. Ryan has been such a faithful partner with Marion Polk Food Share on helping educate people how the life they live can have a legacy beyond their life to support Marion Polk Food Share, but obviously the nonprofits in the community that people care about. So Ryan, thank you so much for your partnership. Ring the bell. Linda, do I see you raising your hand?
One. Yeah, we couldn't figure out how to raise our hand on the computer.
The
Anyway.
hand is missing on this side.
Anyway, I want to ring the bell for Salem Leadership Foundation's Rain Fest event, and it's going to be happening again this year, one way or another. It's golfing in the snow, rain, whatever it is, raising support for Salem Leadership Foundation. And I think about it particularly because Ryan and I are on the board. But if anyone wants to sponsor, Warren and I are going to play golf at Salem Golf Course in support of Rainfest. And I think Ryan may be doing that in Top Golf. I'm not sure, but
We'll be wearing our chest waders.
he always gets more sponsors than we do, though. So we would like, anyway, it is an event coming up. If anyone's interested, I'll try to put some information in the chat. You can email me and supporting us. And we usually do get a lot of good support from Rotarians who have already expressed support. We appreciate it. Salem Leadership Foundation has been doing wonderful things in the community during this COVID time. So it's really worth the support. Thank you.
The bell.
Ring the bell. Okay.
Anyone else?
Rick, it's
Yes,
Linda Norris.
Linda,
I would
please go ahead,
also
Linda.
like to- Thanks. I would like to add to Shane's bell ringer.
Oh, great. And so I saw in the advance, sorry, Patrick, he would like to do that as well. Thank you.
Any other bell ringers? Jen?
Great, thank you. Jen Columbus with Oregon Community Foundation. I'd like to ring the bell for OCF volunteers, and in particular for our speaker today, Ryan Collier, who is a member of the OCF Leadership Council for the region and a huge supporter of charitable planning. And also for Rick Galpo, who just finished presenting at an OCF statewide education event. So thank you both.
We'll ring the bell.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Thank you, Past President Russ. I'd like to ring the bell for the Salem Police Foundation and our 10th annual Breakfast with the Chief on February 18th at 8 a.m., brought to you by Salem Health. You'll get to hear from our new police chief, Trevor Womack, get inside view of our new police station and learn about what the Salem Police Foundation is doing to support our officers. Like everything during COVID, our event has gone virtual, and you need to RSVP to get a required, you'll need to RSVP to get advanced URL to enter the event that day. Sorry, that came out all wrong. Register, you'll get the URL, you get to log on to the event when it happens, and all funds raised that day will go towards a special effort detailed in the program. Also training and equipment for our officers. So learn more at salempolicefoundation.org.
All right, anyone else? We got just a little minute or two more time. Russ, you just want to call out anyone and make them do it?
So I'll go ahead and do one.
Hi, Don.
Great, John, go ahead.
Many probably know I'm quite a baseball fan. I love the game of baseball, and this week saw the passing of two Hall of Famers, Don Sutton and Hank Aaron. And for those of us in my generation who grew up with these players, they bring a lot of memories. And I especially remember sitting in a motel room in Baker City to watch Hank Aaron hit his 715th home run. And that's a memory that will be with me forever. And so I just want to ring the bell in recognition of greatness and humanitarianism.
I'll ring the bell for you.
All right, Russ, I'm going to turn it back to you. For everyone who did a bell ringer, of course, this is Rotary and this is the honor system. I made it easier. I put the link in the chat so you can support the Rotary Foundation by just going through that link and making your donation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Rick. And again, as a reminder, all the funds for the bell ringers do go to the Salem Rotary Foundation, which is the heart of our giving engine. So I was not aware of Don Sutton. That was news to me. Thanks, John. Okay, it's time for our program. And Linda Bednars, I'm going to give you the helm here.
All right, thank you, President Russ, past President Russ, fellow Rotarians. I'm very happy to chair this program today to sponsor our friend Ryan. But first, I do have a head table. And I decided that I was going to choose a head table representing different phases of estate planning and implementation, end of life issues. So first of all, I did invite Mary Way, who was Ryan's sponsor into Rotary. She's a former member of our club and now lives in Bend, but she also was financial advisor working with the H group for many years here in Salem. So we welcome Mary to join us today. And of course, as an advisor, helping people plan their finances ahead of time. And then I also wanted to include Tom Golden, who we heard from earlier. Whereas Ryan and Mary both help families plan their estate before a loss occurs, Tom has an important role in supporting families at their time of loss. And therefore, I asked him to be part of the head table today. And then I was going to have Michael Pettyjohn, but he was not able to be here today, but he would represent after a loss, as a trustee of people working at Pioneer Trust Bank, he helps implement estate planning. So that's our head table for today. I was going to try to get a red badger, but didn't quite get anyone who, and if there's a new member here who wants to raise their hand real quick to be a red badger at the head table, go ahead, we'll give you credit. So we need to try to get that in there. So I'm introducing my good friend, Ryan Collier, who really doesn't need any introduction, but I wanted to share some information about him. He sent me an official biography, which was fairly brief, and I did a little digging to add a little bit more. So Ryan did grow up in Seattle. He went to University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, where he met his wife, Holly. And then he came down to Salem to go to Willamette University Law School. So we're glad he came down and stayed in Salem since then. He is a partner. This is his official bio. He's a partner at Collier Law, a 4-attorney law firm dedicated to helping families with life's transitions. They practice exclusively in the area of estate planning and administration. Collier Law is dedicated to serving the community, and we've heard about some of this already, but particularly with the nonprofits that we know of, Marinport Food Share, Boys and Girls Club, Salem Art Association, Willamette Valley Hospice, and of course Rotary, Salem Leadership Foundation. We could go on and on. They're particularly proud of the work they do for Salem Police Foundation and first responders. And this was interesting. Collier Law has prepared pro bono estate plans for over 24 Salem Police Department officers, staff, and their families. That's known that. That's all he told me in his official bio. So in a little digging, I found a little more. That he actually has had several awards, and the local attorneys and judges ranked Ryan a high, received preeminent rating for his knowledge and experience in trusts and estates, general practice, and wills and probate. And this is the highest rating given by Martindale Hubbell. So I assume that's a prestigious lawyer thing. It's really cool. The Super Lawyers magazine awarded Ryan with the Oregon Rising Star in 2010 and 2011, an honor given to less than 5% of Oregon attorneys. In 2010, Statesman Journal Media selected Ryan as one of awarded the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce Outstanding Young Professional Award. Some of us may remember that. That's why I knew he had some of these things in his history. So that's why I did the digging. We're very privileged to have Ryan as part of our club and to be able to present to us today. And by the way, he does have some leisure time where he loves to ski. Maybe you've seen him with those pictures on the mountains, and to travel, spend time with his wife, Holly, and their 3 adult sons, Austin, Jacob, and Sean. So we really welcome Ryan to share the do's and don'ts of estate planning.
Well, thank you very much. I was keeping it brief because so many of you are my friends, both professionally and personally, and many of you already know things about me. And so, but I appreciate that extra investigative journalism that you did to find out more about me. But it's a pleasure to get a chance to chat with you guys about something that I'm passionate about, obviously the work I do in estate planning, but I also want to reach out to the many professionals that are here, both my CPA friends, my financial advising friends, my trustee friends, my friends in the nonprofit. Many of us work in all these areas. And I think I want to emphasize today that one of the best parts and one of the most important parts of getting your own affairs in order and getting yourself organized is having the right people in your corner. And having a team of professionals that you work with, whether it's Tom Golden and his funeral services and doing pre-planning, having a group of professionals that you can work with your family, that can support your family in those times of need, in those life transitions that we have, is really important. And one of the beautiful things about Rotary is over these last 10 plus years in Rotary, I've made so many more friends and people that I could just pick up the phone and say, Tom, how would you handle this situation? Can you help this client? Or Mary, Can we work together to answer some of these questions? And just having a group of professionals around you, choose that group that you're going to trust to be able to help your family in those times is a really important, critical part. So with that, thank you, Head Table, for being here and supporting the work that we all do as professionals to support our clients. Today, I am going to be talking about common estate planning mistakes. You know, what I've seen in my 23 years of practice, and really how you, on a personal level, can avoid some of those same pitfalls. And whenever we're doing estate planning, all you're really doing is building a toolbox. Just like you have a toolbox in your garage and you have a home project you need to accomplish, you'll go get the right tool out of that toolbox to be able to fix the leaking sink or do whatever you have to do. By the same token, there's no one issue that you're going to deal with in estate planning. There's a myriad of different things that you're going to have to do if you either get sick or if a loved one passes away, and your family, in order to deal with that challenging time, needs the right tools to be able to use. So really everybody, whether you're 18 years old or whether you're 88 years old, needs some kind of toolbox so that your family can lean in and help you in those challenging times. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my slide presentation. All right, so common estate planning mistakes. In general, I'm going to just talk about how do you deal with incapacity or the disability of a loved one. I'm going to talk a little bit about what is probate, what are some steps to avoid that probate process, how to minimize taxes. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. I'm going to talk in general about protecting assets. And also, how do I incorporate my values, particularly your charitable values, into the planning that you do? So a couple things. There we go. Number one mistake that I see is people primarily just not having the right tools in their toolbox. But think about in your own situation, what if you can't sign your name? Think about all the different things that you do every day that just requires a signature, requires your authority. It could be things like calling your utility company because you need to change something on your bill or your services. But if you're not the account owner, they're not even going to talk to you. So if you can't sign your name, if you don't have the ability to control your own financial or property affairs, and then something happens to you where you become incapacitated, what does your family do? Well, quite frankly, you're stuck. The reality is no one, not even your spouse, has the legal authority to sign your name or to deal with those things unless you appoint someone to do that. And you've heard of that tool, that power of attorney. We call it a durable power of attorney because it's still effective even if you're incapacitated. So that period in your life, you want a tool called a power of attorney to appoint, if you're married, your spouse or other responsible loved ones, to be able to step in and just keep business going, to keep taking care of those things, even on a temporary basis. And having a good power of attorney is really important. Here in Oregon, we want our power of attorney to be all-encompassing, meaning we want it to include every specific power you could think of that you might need to deal with. And not having a complete power of attorney is one of the other challenging mistakes I see, meaning if someone comes to me and a loved one is now incapacitated and they have a power of attorney from 10 or 20 years ago that's maybe a Stephen's Nest form that's 3 pages long, well, the challenge is it may not have all the authority you need. And in particular, things like dealing with the Social Security Administration or Medicare benefits, dealing with mail, dealing with digital assets, dealing with a need for a family to be able to create trust. Those are all common powers that I don't see in the kind of powers of attorney that you see online. So just making sure that you have a really great sturdy tool that your family can use, really critically important. Second tool, people don't make plans for medical decisions. Think about all the decisions you make when you go talk to a doctor. It might be, where do I want to get treatment? Or what specific medications do I need? Or what doctor do I want to hire or fire? We take it for granted that we could direct our own care. And if we can't direct our own care, we want to be able to have someone that can do that for you. And believe it or not, your spouse or family members don't have that authority unless you grant it. Well, in Oregon, we have such a great, useful tool that really everybody can get fairly easily, called an advance directive for healthcare. Oregon, very progressive. How many people remember the Terry Schiavo case? Well, hopefully we all remember that case. That poor woman, 27 years old, had a massive kind of brain aneurysm and was in a coma with no brain activity for 14 years on life support, while her family, her parents and her husband fought a legal battle up and down to the US Supreme Court twice on two simple questions. What would Terry have wanted? And who should make the decision? Well, Terry's legacy, as tragic as it was, actually started this beautiful conversation all around the country about what tools can we put in place so that we can care for our loved ones, so their decisions will be fulfilled, so we can make good decisions for them. So Oregon's advance directive is one of the first combination healthcare power of attorneys and directive to physicians on end-of-life care in the country. And you all have it available to you. If you go to your hospital or your doctor, there's a big fat stack of Oregon Health Decisions workbooks that you should fill out. And I wish nurses and administrators would twist your arm just a little bit harder to get those done, because it's such an important tool for you to have. Along with that, though, is medical records. All your medical records by a 2004 federal legislation, acronym HIPAA, are confidential. And not even close family members really have the right to talk to your doctors or your family or your medical administrators about your medical care unless you authorize it in writing. And so critical piece is making sure when you go to the hospital or when you're working with your attorney that you have signed a document, a HIPAA release that says, hey, doctors, hospital administrators, here's the list of people that you can talk to about my medical situation, or can find out what my prognosis is or where I am or what hospital room I'm in. Everybody needs to make sure you do that. And every time you go see a doctor, you have the ability to do it. I mean, that stack of forms you fill out when they give it to you in the waiting room, one of them is actually a medical release that says, who can we talk to about your medical condition? So make sure that your family has that level of access. So these first three tools, write this down. This is one of the things you write down. Everybody, if you're 18 years old or older, needs a power of attorney, an advance directive for healthcare, and a medical release. Why might you need them when you're 18? Because you're an adult. And if you're an adult, no one else can manage your affairs without your permission. I'm going to give you an example, which my son is going to be my example, and he gave me permission to share this story. So my son, Jacob, who is an Oregon State Beaver, go Beavs. He was in his second year studying for finals, and he was a residential advisor, an RA, and he did something where he stood up, blacked out, fell straight back on the back of his head on his concrete floor, cracked his skull open, and woke up about 2 hours later, bleeding with a pretty significant concussion and nerve damage. He could call 911 barely on his phone. Ambulance came, took him to, is it Legacy that's down in Corvallis? And this is at about 10 o'clock at night, I get that phone call that all parents dread getting. Hey, Dad, that voice went, oh my gosh, something's really wrong. Well, the hospital, because an adult would not call me, they had to wait for him to regain enough consciousness to then call me. So of course I knew I had to go talk to his doctors. All my sons, when they turned 18, they had to come talk to Dad, or at least an attorney in the office. Like, none of them actually wanted to work with me. They work with someone else here. And then they each did those three tools. So I took this PDF of each of those tools, threw it on my phone, drove down to Corvallis, and walked into the emergency room and walked up to the check-in desk, said, oh my gosh, my son's here. I need to go talk to him. And that wonderful lady doing her job said, I'm sorry, sir, I cannot give out that information. So across the desk, this is not actually how you do email, but I went like this, and I emailed her the advance directive and the medical release. And she opened it up right in front of me and says, oh, Mr. Collier, your son's through those doors, third door on the right. And because Jacob had those tools in place, I was able to advocate for him, talk to his doctors, make sure he they did the MRI to check for bleeding on the brain, like write down all the instructions for treatment. Because when you have a concussion, you're literally not going to remember anything, and having a family member to advocate for you, critically important. So everybody needs those basic tools so that your family can care for you, so that you're not a burden on the people you leave behind. So critical for you to have them. Let's talk a little bit about number 4 mistake. People just don't plan for their passing. And I'm going to disclose this to you. We don't necessarily get off this world without dying. Like, we all are going to pass at some point, and planning for that to make it that challenging life situation as easy as possible on our loved ones is really important, because they're already going to be challenged with grief and the struggle of loss. And if we're also a burden on them because we didn't plan it all, that creates a real problem for us. Now, 70% of people pass away with no plan at all. That means, like, not even chicken scratch on a little tablecloth. Not that that's legal, like, I'm not telling you to do that. But not planning is kind of a recipe for struggles within your family. And I bet among Rotarians, you guys are beating the average. Like, I'm willing to bet that it's probably closer to 30% of people here listening to me today that really haven't put together any kind of plan. Probably another third have a plan, but maybe they haven't even looked at it in 5 or 10 years. And then the other third of us probably have done some good planning, but you're also going to learn a couple things today that might help you tweak your plan a little bit. So there's going to be a little bit of something for everybody today. But it's still important to make sure you have a good plan. And what can we do to resolve that? Well, if you don't have any plan, the state of Oregon has a plan for you. And for the most part, it might not go exactly the way you want it, but at the same time, at least Oregon, like every state, has some kind of plan to help your family transition a loved one or a deceased person, their assets, to where they need to go. But if you don't have a plan, we call it an intestate estate, meaning there's no plan. We just have to use Oregon's sort of default rules for you. And the law decides those things, like who should serve as your personal representative or executor, or where your property goes when you pass. But the other challenge is it does create some conflict. And the reason is because there's sort of a priority for who should serve in that role if you don't have a plan. It starts with a spouse. That's probably the right one. And then it says kids, but no particular kid. And then next of kin. Like, what does that even mean? So your family sort of has to resolve it amongst themselves who's going to serve, and that can create its own level of conflict. And invariably, if you have no plan, it does make that process longer and more expensive. So when we pass away and if we don't have another method of transferring assets at death, we use a court process called probate. Our legislature, like every legislature, set up that system that's court supervised to make sure that your wishes are followed, and that no one takes advantage and that creditors are paid. But every court system is its own bureaucracy, meaning that it takes a little bit longer, and 12 to 18 months is sort of typical with the probate process. But admittedly, COVID sort of stretched that time out a little bit because things are even harder now. And the other challenge with probate is lawyers. I love lawyers. Like, I think lawyers are the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody needs a lawyer. But you don't want to spend a ton of time with us. Like, it gets really expensive if you spend a lot of time with us. And the reality is, probate processes now, they're costing between about $10,000 and $15,000 is pretty typical. And man, 12 to 18 months, that's a lot of time. Well, the first solution, if you have no plan, is at a minimum having a last will and testament, your instructions. That last will and testament, a will is just simply your instructions to the court. So if you have a will, maybe you prepared one a long time ago, know that that will envisions that your family will go through a probate process to administer your estate, because the will has no other authority other than to tell the court, here's what we want you to do. But it's still good to have a plan and have a will, so that we know who should be in charge and what your wishes are and how do bills get paid and where stuff should go. That's still important. But if you want to do something that avoids that probate process, and I'd say most of my client, and literally I mean 95% of my clients, use some form of a revocable living trust. Now, you've probably heard of this before. Essentially, a trust is just simply your agreement with someone you trust. That's actually why you call it a trust, that if I'm either sick or if I pass away, here's how I want you, trusted person, to administer my affairs, to take care of my assets for me. The trust is the tool we would use to manage assets in those two situations. Now, it's revocable because you can change it. It's living because it's alive while you're alive. And it's just your instructions on those two situations. Until those situations happen, until you are either sick or you pass, that trust kind of waits in the background for those triggering events. And when they happen, they spring to life to give your, we call it a trustee, authority to manage assets. And we connect assets like real estate, bank accounts, investment accounts. We connect those to that trust just so there's a really easy transition of authority from you being healthy to if you got sick to if you passed away. There's hopefully no need for a court involvement to administer that estate. Your family's able to do it privately. You know, and that's really another challenge with a probate court is it is public. You know, the inventory of your assets and the contact information for your family, all that stuff is publicly available when you're in a probate process. In a trust, in a revocable trust, you do get more privacy, meaning it's kept within the family. Just another advantage to that. Let's talk a little bit about estate tax. I'm going to not go into great detail about the Internal Revenue Code and its inner workings. I know probably there's about 6 of my CPA Rotary friends that are on today that would love it if I spent the next hour talking about the Internal Revenue Code, but I'm going to limit it just to a couple little key topics. One is you live in a great state, and I'm going to say Oregon is the best state, and I love Oregon. It's mountains and it's oceans and its people are super friendly, and when you're driving in the fast lane, the drivers get out of your way because they're so dang nice. All those things are wonderful about Oregon. Admittedly, we have a little bit of a challenging estate tax system, meaning that when you pass away, the Oregon Department of Revenue does want its share of taxes. And you've probably heard of estate tax, and you've probably heard that the federal limits right now are $11.8 million per person of exemption. Man, until your estate's roughly $23 million on a federal level, it probably wouldn't be subject to tax. Well, that will probably change this year, but in any event, we're more worried about Oregon's tax system because in Oregon, your exemption is only $1 million. So if you add up the face value of life insurance, retirement accounts, real estate, business interests, you add all that up, and if it exceeds $1 million, whoops, your family's going to be subject to some estate tax when you pass away, particularly if you don't do any planning for it. So what can you do? Well, if you're a married couple, you want to use not one, but 2 exemptions. And if you're a married couple, you don't want all of your assets just to go to the surviving spouse when you pass away, because then you lose your exemption. In Oregon, if you don't use that exemption when you pass away, you lose it. So what we want to do is if you're a married couple, instead of giving everything outright to your spouse, you would want to split that estate. So the deceased spouses can capture their $1 million exemption. It's actually put in a separate trust for the benefit of the surviving spouse. They can manage it. It's just that they're controlling 2 buckets instead of 1 bucket. And by doing that, we can double from 1 to 2 million what a married couple can pass to their family before the first dollar of tax comes out. Now that tax rate for everything over that exemption limit starts about 10% and starts graduating up to 16%. Certainly not as much as the 40% federal rate, but if I can minimize taxes and give more to my family, I would do that. The other thing for the Salem Rotary Foundation and all my wonderful charitable friends here is if you give everything to charity, you're going to pay 0 estate tax because you get that massive deduction for charitable giving. So know that all the charitable planning you do within your own estate plan will also reduce the amount of taxes that are paid. So that's a little plug for you, Jen Columbus. All right, so tax planning is very important that if your threshold of assets exceeds that $1 million exemption, you'll want to lean in with your attorney and your CPA about what steps you can take to minimize the taxes for your loved ones. Oh, and I have a special diagram here. So if you have a joint trust and you're a married couple, it starts off as joint. When the first spouse passes away, we take that $1 million exemption from the deceased spouse, put it in one bucket, and then the rest of the estate goes in another bucket, and the surviving spouse manages both. The reason we're able to do this is because the deceased spouse's share, we put just enough of a restriction on it that it gets its own tax ID number and is not part of the surviving spouse's estate. That restriction is a provision that says these assets should only be used for health, maintenance, support, and education. Now that's very broad, but it's enough of a restriction that the IRS accepts it and is understanding about it. So that's how we're able to do it. Let's talk about a couple other challenges that I see, and I'll be a little more quick about this, is people not planning for protecting the inheritance that they want to leave to their loved ones. And I see this in a couple ways. One is, in particular, if you are in a second marriage and you're married to someone and you have kids from a prior marriage, the risk is that you and your spouse, when you pass away, if you give everything to the surviving spouse and those assets are in their name, the risk is you unintentionally may end up disinheriting your own kids. You know, those assets actually would become the surviving spouses. Later in life, it's probably their kids that are taking care of them in their age. And we want to create a plan in that situation that makes sure that both spouses commit to a plan to, let's say, divide the estate equally between the two families. Well, we're able to do that if we can split the estate when the first spouse passes away and then provide that protection for the kids downstream from being disinherited. The other risk that we have is financial elder abuse is rampant in our community, and it's affecting our older population because largely they're isolated. Their loved ones are probably not actively involved in their lives. And the risk is someone, a predator, or I would call them a ne'er-do-well because has less swear words in it. But the risk is they may come in and take advantage of the loneliness and the isolation and their health concerns, their diminished capacity. And the risk is that you will literally give away the farm to keep getting care. And we need to take care of our loved ones who are in this situation. We can put some tools in that trust that say, hey, surviving spouse, if you choose to remarry, it better be about love because it's not going to be about money. We can require a prenuptial agreement. And if that ne'er-do-well or predator balks at the prenuptial agreement, well, whoops, maybe red flags should be going off that there's something else going on. And if surviving spouse and new fiance run off to Las Vegas and get married anyway, well, the trust can have a provision that says, hey, the deceased spouse's share, the spigot turns off, successor trustee steps in to manage those assets to protect them and protect the original plan. That's a very common thing that we do to protect that plan. Number 7 mistake I see is people may have an estate plan, but their retirement accounts may be their largest assets. And Mary, you and I have worked on these cases where a client has this wonderful estate plan, but then didn't update their retirement plans and didn't change the beneficiary designation, and where their trust might say, please give equally to my kids. Out of convenience, maybe they changed their beneficiary designation and just named one kid because I'm sure they'll handle everything. Well, we see this all the time. So we want to make sure that even assets that don't end up in the name of the trust, because retirement accounts, we generally don't put them into your living trust, are still part of the overall plan. And how many people, I could do a whole nother presentation on the Secure Act, by the way, but I'm not going to do it. So January of last year, our Congress adopted the Secure Act and largely and dramatically changed the way beneficiaries can receive retirement accounts upon the death of the account owner. It used to be, and Mary and I have also done this kind of planning, where one of the great benefits of a retirement account when you're a loved one is that you also then get to recalculate the minimum distributions for your own age and stretch those out and save them for your own retirement. Well, Congress put an end to that last January and said, unless you're an eligible designated beneficiary, you can't do that. So the only people that can receive the benefit of a retirement account after a death and stretch it out for their life expectancy are now spouses, disabled persons, chronically ill people, people that are less than 10 years younger than the account owner, or if you're a minor, you can delay the withdrawal until the age of majority. And then everyone else has to take it out within 10 years. Every single dollar has to come out, tax has to be paid on it for those traditional IRAs. Wow, that's a pretty dramatic change. And the reason I'm saying that is because you may not have updated your own plan and your retirement account beneficiary designations since the Secure Act. And now that we know that certain beneficiaries, like charities, like the chronically ill or disabled kids that we have, might be better recipients of retirement accounts than everybody else. So you might want to do more things like picking and choosing which assets you give to charity or which assets you give to certain beneficiaries based on who will get the most benefit from under the Secure Act from your retirement accounts. So food for thought is investigate the beneficiary designations on your retirement accounts and then rethink your overall estate plan to incorporate the retirement accounts in, and talk to your advisor and talk to your CPA and attorney about what can I do to get the most advantage given the asset makeup I have. So food for thought on that. All right. The last mistake that I'm going to talk about today, and I'm still leaving some time for questions, is charity. Charity comes from individuals. I think everybody, all of our nonprofit friends here today would attest to that, that too many people give generously during their life, but then don't incorporate their giving into their own estate plan. And we are very generous, and we have the ability to leave a legacy and an example of our stewardship to the people we leave behind. So I would encourage all of you, as you're considering giving, the Salem Rotary Foundation is a foundation that we love that does great work here locally. Consider changing or updating your estate plan to incorporate your charitable wishes there. You can give fixed amounts. You can, as a memorial to your favorite charity, you can give specific property. You can tithe, give a percentage. You can, and then let me talk a little bit about and percentages. So Holly and I, we of course have an estate plan, and we also have 3 young sons. And when they were younger, we were sort of the opinion that, you know what, our kids are our favorite charity, and we want to make sure that they get everything. And then as we thought about that more, we realized that, hey, if we're gone, it's this community that's going to be raising our kids. What can we do to make this the healthiest, the best community we possibly can? So Holly and I made a decision a long time ago to take 10% of our estate when we pass away and to give that to charity in a way that our kids can participate. And what we've done is we have set up a fund with the Oregon Community Foundation that when we pass away, 10% goes into that fund, naming and listing kind of here's examples of our favorite charities that we gave to during life, but ultimately leaving those 3 sons as the advisors for that fund. And what that does is now twice a year after we're gone, those kids have to get together and talk about something positive and do something in our honor and do something that benefits charity. So I've accomplished a whole lot of goals. One, I've given back to this community that will invest in all the charities that we love. I've made this community healthier. I've been a good steward to my sons and a good example of what giving looks like and how they can think about other. And I'm making them get together twice a year and talk about something positive, hopefully helping that relationship to last longer. So that's just an example of what we've done that you might want to consider incorporating. Also, your retirement accounts. You have the ability based on when you take your minimum distribution, if you're over the age of 72 and starting to take your minimum distribution, and yet you don't want it, it's just going to increase your time. You have the ability to call up your custodian and say, hey, custodian, would you cut a check directly to these charities, please? Because I don't need my whole minimum distribution. It goes directly to the charity. You don't have to pay taxes on it. It's a great example. Also, in your estate planning, consider starting by giving your retirement accounts to charity, because if it's a traditional IRA, your kids, every dollar they take out after your death is going to get taxed. And after Oregon federal taxes, maybe they're lucky if they get 60 cents on the dollar. Hey, Rick Goppo and Jen Columbus, How much income taxes do charities pay on those gifts? 0. So they're the better beneficiary of your retirement accounts. So those are the mistakes I want to talk about today, but the takeaways for you guys are: estate plan is a lifetime process. Find a group of advisors and professionals that you want to work with for the next umpteen years to be a support to you and your family, and then update. Get back together with your advisors. Talk about your retirement plans and your estate plan and make sure it's staying healthy and up to date. Here at our office, we contact you every 2 years because we want to check in on have things changed. And because so many of my clients do trusts, we want those trusts to stay healthy. So we want to just do a checkup to make sure they're healthy. So get back together with your attorney and your planner and make sure that your estate is up to date. A couple things. I talked about the 4 lawyers at my office. My partner, Stephanie Palmblad, Jonathan Baxomassi, and Jacob Sinclair, our newest attorney, are attorneys at our office. And if you want a little bit more detail than I was able to give today, actually I can, a presentation is about a little bit longer. We actually have one coming up that we're doing with the Willamette Valley Hospice on January 28th. If you want more information, you can go to our website and register. I also have another one that you might be interested in, which is your trustee prepared? So if you have an estate plan, do your loved ones even know what to do? So those 2 are available to you. And with that, I'm gonna take any questions.
All right, thanks, Ryan. We do have a few minutes. Yeah, we have some time for questions. So if you have questions, just raise your hand or use the chat, and we'll answer your questions.
All right, Mr. Russ, so are you going to look for questions in the chat?
I'm gonna let you do that because I've got it on a small screen.
Okay, so I was not paying attention to the chat window. Let me see if I can
monitor the chat too. This is Jessica.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. I think I saw, Mark, is your hand up?
Larry's hand is up. Let's pull him up.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciated what you said. A lot of it's I've heard before, but I do have a question. So how much, so you mentioned about tax accountants and lawyers. Do we need to talk to both of them at the same time, or do we necessarily, can we just deal with one or the other, or what situations do we need to have both professionals involved in our estate planning?
Sure. So Larry's question was, and I'll repeat it, was what professionals should be involved in these kinds of decisions? Now, it obviously depends. So for instance, if we're dealing with retirement accounts, I might want your investment advisor there and myself. And quite frankly, I'm depending on the issue or the question we're dealing with, we might get the CPA involved just to make sure that we're all on the same page, because there's certainly some economies of scale when we can all be talking at the same time. And so, Larry, I guess my answer is it depends on the issue that we're dealing with. But I certainly like to make sure that the work and advice that I'm giving isn't working against what, let's say, you're trying to do with a CPA, or against any advice that you might be getting from an advisor. If we can get on the same page, we have 2 different perspectives or 3 different perspectives. And sometimes when you have multiple perspectives working together, you make better decisions. So I would say it depends on the issue. You know, ask any one of us, would it be helpful to involve Ryan or the CPA or my advisor in this? And we'll let you know in our experience what would work best. Mary's raising her hand.
Mary, you're on mute.
Now maybe, can you hear me? Ryan, I used to hear clients say that their retirement plan beneficiary only named one of their children out of 3. And they would say things like, oh, well, she's the responsible one. I'm sure that she will share in a fair manner with the others. And while that may be true, could you talk about the pitfalls of that strategy?
Yeah, the challenge is when you name, let's start with retirement accounts. If you name one beneficiary, they become the new owner of that account when they pass away. And you're truly, if it was your anticipation that they would then be generous and make sure it splits equally, well, one, they don't have to, for sure. And the other challenge is you're sort of putting a huge burden on them to figure out, oh my gosh, how do we pay the taxes and how do I split the account and how do I do that? And the reality is they don't have to. You can't even force them to do that. And even if they could, how would you mechanically do it with a retirement account in a way that wasn't detrimental to them anyway? The bigger challenge that I see on that too is when people like add family members to the deed of their house or add a family member to a bank account. Well, as soon as you do that, you have made them a joint owner. And when you make them a joint owner, you've effectively made a gift, a taxable gift to them for half of the value of the account or half of the value of the real estate, which your CPAs will tell you must be declared on a 709 gift tax form, and it will reduce your federal exemption a little bit. The other issues, though, you've also lost control. You now no longer control that asset and would require their signature to release it or to do those things with it. And then that asset's also then subject to their own life circumstances, bankruptcies, creditors, divorces. There's better plans than adding them as joint owners on accounts or sole beneficiaries of accounts that you intend to be spread more equally. Mary, does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Okay. I also saw Marilyn Schuster ask this question. Is there any effort to increase Oregon's estate tax exemption? Well, we've been trying for 20 years. I think we've had 5 citizen initiatives and in every single legislative session. So every 2 years, so 20 divided by 2, at least 10 or so legislative sessions that I've been in back here in Oregon. We've been trying and absolutely not, for whatever reason, Oregonians just love that estate tax. In the 2 legislative sessions ago, we did talk the governor into signing a law, a inflationary adjustment. So technically it's not $1 million, it's like $1,043,000. I actually don't remember the adjustment, but it's not very much. Okay, so I have an question from Iria. I would like my 18-year-old to be prepared and for a similar situation of not being able to make medical decisions and needing power of attorney. I think for someone his age, it would be great to have a teenage package. I would say I do, and it probably if you have an attorney, they probably do too. It's basically sort of a discounted rate that we charge for putting together those 3 core documents, and $250 or $300 is pretty typical for putting together kind of those disability documents you need. That'd be fairly typical. So absolutely, you should get that in place, just like I did with my sons.
Any other questions? I think not. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for us.
Looks like Warren Bednars, do you have a question? Oh, you're muted.
No, I don't. I'm just making a comment. I was just saying that I have made the steps. We have made the steps that Ryan has spoken about, and we did bring the attorney, the accountant, and the normal attorney, accountant, and the estate accountant all together because they know what we want. And our situation, I'm willing to pay for our son is, well, basically our 3 children. I'm willing to pay for to have our 3 children go to the same attorney. She cannot share the information between all of us, but she'll know the larger plan that we have in place. And that's the important thing. Our estate is large enough that we need to do something.
It's good. I appreciate your suggestions, Ryan, of having the young people, do those documents. We don't always think about that. So that was good suggestion.
Frankly, I didn't do a will until we had kids.
Yeah.
Well, on that, Warren, you're exactly right. It's usually a life event that sort of triggers, oh, I think I need to get something in order. And it's the having kids, retiring, having an illness in the family. Those are by far the key things that brings people to my doorstep. On the multi-generational thing, I really think it's a great idea to have one attorney work with your family because they are adept at and skilled at keeping each client's matter confidential, but still knowing that there's a economy of scale of working with the whole family. I mean, it's one of the things I love most about what I do is I get to work with multiple generations. So that's a great part too. I also want to do a Tom Golden plug right now, because we've touched on the fact of all these different professional advisors being involved in your affairs. And I'm going to give Tom Golden a plug, particularly because people don't do enough pre-planning for funeral arrangements and how their remains should be handled. And from personal experience, I'm not even talking about legal experience, I'm talking about personal experience, the gift that you can give to your family of planning all that stuff in advance and taking care of it is priceless. Because one of the biggest things that people worry about is, am I doing what dad or mom would have wanted? And if they've already pre-planned, you know that they've done what they wanted. And more importantly, it's really nice to be a guest at your loved one or your family's funeral and not have to be the one that plans the whole thing. It's a whole nother level of gift that you can give your family. So I'm going to lean in and say, not enough people here have probably done the pre-planning, and it makes the world of difference to your families.
Thanks, Ryan. And Ryan, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us and experience with us today. It's been, I've learned several things that I've written down. I have to follow up on, even though I thought I was in pretty good shape. So everybody, let's just give Ryan a big thanks and let him know how much we appreciate it. And Ryan, as always, as you know, as a member of the club, every year the club does make a donation in honor of our speakers to the Salem Rotary Foundation, and we will do that for you as well. And next week, our meeting is going to be on the Marion Polk Continuum of Care, HUD designation. That's a lot of words, and Cindy Lanasar is going to help us understand what that's all about. So that'll be our program for next week. And until then, everybody enjoy your week and stay safe, and we'll see you then. Bye now.